Hello everyone, that Manga Kid here to do another manga discussion video, this time about Scum's Wish by Mango Yokoyari. This is not a review, this will have spoilers. I will be talking in depth about the series, the characters, and what happens up until the end and the final 8th volume. So if you would like a spoiler-free review, you can check that out. I made one for this series a couple of years ago. It is on my channel. You can head over there if you want a spoiler-free review. If you would like tons of spoilers, stick around. So like I said, 8 volumes to Scum's Wish. I read this all in one sitting the other day. Only took me a couple hours. It's not really deep, not a lot of text, and the text is mostly conversational, so it's pretty simple to get through. Obviously the art is incredible. These covers, like the really beautiful like rainbow sort of hair, really simple back cover designs on all of them. But basically, this is a series that I watched the anime for originally. The anime is almost shot-for-shot remake of the manga, so you can really consume either or. I chose to consume both because I watched the anime when it came out. I don't even remember what year that was. And then I purchased the manga when it started licensing physically here by Yen Press. And so I bought these, I think I bought the first couple and then I had to wait for each subsequent volume, if I remember correctly. I enjoyed this series, obviously, because I enjoyed the anime enough that I went to purchase the manga. This is about a couple of teenagers, Hanabi and Mugi. This is Hanabi, who are both in love with adults in their lives, who obviously the love is unrequited. And so they feel hopeless in their crushes. They happen to meet each other and realize that, you know, both of them are in love with someone who will never love them back. And so they decide to enter a fake kind of relationship where they basically just satisfy each other's needs, usually physical, but also emotional needs, and pretend, you know, while they're together, they can fantasize and pretend that they're with the person they actually want to be with. And so, yeah, it's a lot. There are a lot of characters, well, not a lot, but there's quite a few characters, all of which are dealing with unrequited love in one way or another, all intertwined. This is not a love triangle. This is like a love hexagon or something, some other shape with lots of more points than a triangle. Because, so we have Hanabi and Mugi, like I mentioned. Some really pretty colorful pages at the front. So we've got Hanabi, beautiful, stunning character designs. Mugi, who's pretty popular. Honestly, both of them are. They're kind of quiet, popular people who everybody kind of looks up to, and they're like, yeah, this couple makes sense. So it starts off, I just want to show you this page of the art because I just think that the character designs are really, really cute. I like how the hairstyles change. I like the fact that their clothing changes often, and it's just really stylish, honestly. Yeah, like sometimes she's in like a hoodie, or sometimes she's in a really cute top or something, and it just like, I don't know, I just think that this is a really stylish manga. Very visually appealing, and the anime is no exception either. So our first kind of foil to these two is, I'm going to call her Echan because that's what Hanabi calls her. She's kind of her only female friend. They're supposedly best friends, but you get the feeling over the course of the series, they don't know each other very well. They just happen to both be very lonely, and they met each other close to the beginning of high school, and they're, you know, they've remained friends, but they clearly don't, there's something, you know, in the way of that friendship, and we'll get to what that actually is. Excuse me. But then we have the crushes. So the music teacher, Akane, is who Mugi is interested in. She used to be his tutor back when she was younger. And so now he goes to the high school where she teaches music. She's a new teacher, I believe, or newer. She's young. And he's totally in love with her. And then the man here Good Lord, what is his name? I just looked it up. She just calls him Oni-chan. Big brother, older brother, whatever, which is why I can never remember his name. She's known him basically her whole life. He's her next door neighbor, so she grew up with him. He's obviously quite a few years older than her. We get tons of flashbacks of the two of them and her in her childhood, and him being like a teenager kind of when they met. So yeah, they're both technically in love with teachers, though they both knew them prior to them being teachers. So, I mean, maybe that's worth something to you. I don't know, in terms of the discomfort factor. But our other character in the mix here is this girl. She likes to be called Mocha. So Mocha, she is kind of the lolly looking character. She dresses very much like goth Lolita style. And she's in love with Mugi. She's his childhood friend. Though he doesn't seem to be really friends with her either, honestly. Like, he cares about her clearly. They've known each other basically their whole lives since like preschool. But like, they're not really close. And that's an interesting theme throughout this series, is we're told that these characters are all, I guess I can just put this here. We're told that these characters care about other people, but, and I mean, this is where the title Scum's Wish comes in, is they, you know, as the story progresses, they realize more and more that they are very scummy people, and they are in love with scummy people, and they're interacting with scummy people, and they're behaving in scummy ways. And that's kind of the whole point of this series, is that, you know, these characters are coming into their own as young adults, whether that be these teenagers versus these teachers who are in their like mid-20s. So anyway, we learn very quickly that E-chan has a crush on Hanabi. And by crush, I mean obsession with her. She's totally in love with her, infatuated, physically attracted to her. But obviously, being both females, she doesn't want to ruin their relationship, their friendship that they have, because she feels like she's content enough just being, you know, friends with her. However, she senses something strange between Hanabi and Mugi. She senses that it's not real, which she's correct. They're not actually in love with each other. They're using each other as a replacement for their actual loves. And so she kind of propositions Hanabi to be like, well, then why can't I be that for you? Like, why do you need him? And it just, so she gets to a point where they start a physical relationship as well, because, you know, she says the floodgates have opened. I can't stop now. She just wants to be near Hanabi, and she will not stop kind of pursuing her. And this theme of dealing with the weight of someone else's feelings for you, dealing with the weight of other people's emotions more generally, comes up throughout it. And so Hanabi, who, you know, has just hooked up with E-chan, her only female friend, she doesn't want to disappoint her. She doesn't want to, you know, make her upset. She doesn't want to lose her. You know, she's now feeling this next day. She's like, I didn't know how heavily someone else's crush could weigh on you. And, you know, this story is very good at kind of bringing these characters to task on their kind of behavior, because it's all very much like they have crushes on the teachers, and they're like really infatuated with them, and now she's in a position where somebody else is very much infatuated with her, and she doesn't reciprocate those feelings, and she's realizing now how much weight that she is potentially putting on, or will in the future put on, the man that she's in love with, because he will never return those feelings. And so those realizations kind of happen throughout this story. And Mugi, who was sexually active prior to meeting Hanabi, you know, this line of, I'm just an adolescent toy, I haven't learned anything at all, or haven't grown at all, is very interesting, because this boy has been used sexually by a slightly older girl in the past who, you know, he had this sexual experience and then continued to be in a sexual relationship with this older girl who was clearly using him, and clearly he was uncomfortable with it for quite a while. I don't have any bookmarks in this one. And now he's in this relationship where he's, you know, satisfying and getting satisfied by and with Hanabi, and he's feeling like he hasn't really grown up, and he's still in this same position of like sexual relationship with someone he's not actually interested in. And, you know, then now we're into volume 4, and we see that Hanabi is kind of reward driven, which isn't a shocker when you read the earlier volumes. You know, effort is always rewarded with results in every endeavor but one, in all but love. That's why I hate it. You know, and you can see this frustration building of like, you know, other people think I'm hot, other people confess to me, other people that I don't care about want to be with me. Why can't the guy that I want to be with want to be with me? And so, yeah, it just is interesting. So at this point here, Mugi has gone back to sleep with the girl that I was just talking about, the older girl who he used to sleep with when he was in middle school, because he was feeling a bit frustrated, and he went back to her as a kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like revenge or anything, but it just, you know, at the end of the sex, she kind of says, this is the first and only time that you've ever initiated this, meaning and insinuating, and when we see in the flashbacks of their relationship, if you can call it that, that it was quite coercive. She's a couple of years older than him, and you know, at least in the very beginning of it, it was very much that she was a bit more forceful with, or just, you know, I don't want to say praying. They're not that far apart in age, but honestly, like, he was not ready for that, as my interpretation of this part of the story. And I think this happens a lot more often than people talk about. I've talked to guys about this before, of you know, friends of mine who've talked about their first kind of sexual experience, particularly when it's, you know, either a classmate or someone who might be a bit older, and these feelings of like, you know, you're supposed to want to, as a guy, you're told, especially during puberty, that you're supposed to want to have sex all the time. And so all of a sudden you find yourself in that situation, and the person, there's a person who wants to sleep with you and is being very forceful about that fact. And, you know, afterwards you're kind of like, I liked that, right? Like, but there's a bit of confusion, there's nervousness, there's embarrassment, there's shame and discomfort, and then there's but there's nobody to talk to about that kind of stuff, because if you tell your friends, you know, I had sex with somebody, the reaction is, oh, you're so lucky, or oh, you're, you know, that's great, or, you know, now you're a man, or whatever, you know, XYZ. But I don't think that we talk about enough that sometimes it wasn't the right time for it yet. And how do we teach boys and young men that it doesn't, that you can also say no, basically, is what I'm getting at. And that you can also reflect on those situations and feel like it wasn't consensual, or feel like, or acknowledge that, yeah, that was uncomfortable and I wasn't ready for that. And I think that that's an interesting thing that you know, it doesn't say it so much in all those words, but I think that that's a part of this story that I really thought was a good conversation starter. And so at this point here, Hanabi has slept with Eichan, Mugi has slept with this other girl, and they both, you know, see each other after a couple of days, and they both know pretty instantly that something has changed with the two of them. They know, without having to really say it. One of them asks, you know, did you sleep with someone else? And then they both kind of go, yeah, I did too. So then we see that the two teachers, sorry, at this point, this is their first kind of date. Akane, who is the female teacher, she is a nightmare. She likes to play with people's emotions. She has no kind of actual feelings for men, but she has feelings of wanting to conquer men that other people like. She gets off on that, on messing with people's emotions and feelings. And so anyway, the male teacher, who is an innocent, sweet man, the only innocent, sweet person in this entire story, basically, he really likes her. And so she takes him out drinking. They get drunk. And she's like, at this point, ready to get the hell away from him. She's lost interest. He's not entertaining anymore. He's asking her out. She's like, oh, what a bother. And then he accidentally calls her Hana-chan, which is obviously Hanabi. And she's immediately like, oh, I'm interested again. Because she initially started trying to date him in front of Hanabi because she realized very quickly that Hanabi has feelings for him and she wanted to mess with her, which is, you know, a quality you want in a teacher, is for them to sleep with the crush of one of their students just to spite them. So yeah, I mean, that's like I said, the people in this story are not good people. But yeah, so we see that this relationship, if you could call it that, is growing between the two teachers who are the crushes of our main characters. But yeah, we get to this point here. We're in volume 5 now. This is, I believe, a flashback. Yes, because he looks very young there. I think that her parents got divorced or something, or they're talking about both of their parents because they're both in single parent households, I believe. And he's kind of saying to her, sometimes the relationship will crumble slowly until it's broken and can't be fixed. And Hanabi's like, but what if they really love each other? And then he's reassuring her that their relationship is solid, that they're, you know, he'll always be there for her. And I think, you know, this kind of broken home situation, he was the only kind of constant in her life, which is why she's conjured up these feelings of love for him over the years, because he was the safe place. So then we're here with Mocha, who at this point, let me just go back a little bit here to check. Yes, so she goes on a date with Mugi. He finally agrees to go on a date with her, but she can tell he's just kind of humoring her. Mocha's actually quite sweet. She's just obsessive with him and protective and overprotective and annoying. But as a person, like, she's not a bad person. She just is clingy to him. But anyway, so she's having fun on this date, but she knows it's not real. It's not reality. And so this kind of section here of the princess awoke to find herself utterly alone in darkness. Is just, I don't know. I liked this imagery, and I thought this was a really interesting part of the story of this girl who has loved this guy her entire life, and, you know, he kisses her on this date, and he's confused, he's lost, he's you know, I don't want to fault him too much. He's a teenager who's been through some stuff, but, like, you know, he kisses her knowing full well how in love with him she is. And he knows, because, you know, they go back to his place, and he ends up almost sleeping with her to the point where he's taking her clothes off, and then eventually they kind of stop. But, like, you know, he full well knows that he's taking advantage of the fact that she really likes him, and he knows he has no feelings for her. And it's that moment where she's like, am I willing to give myself to this boy in this moment, knowing full well that this will never happen again, that he doesn't love me, he never will, but am I willing to take this moment, experience it, so that I can hold on to it for the rest of my life? Or is this going to be a lot worse if I do this? because now I live with the loneliness, the sadness, and the emptiness of knowing that I did this with the understanding that he doesn't actually care, that I'm not his first choice. But yeah, it was very interesting. So we get to the point here in volume 6 where these two obviously have been messing around with other people, but they don't, they're not in an actual relationship. But they're at the point now where they're no longer pretending that, like, when they're making out or having sex or whatever, actually they don't ever actually go as far as having penetrative sex, the two of them, but they're doing sexual things with each other anyway. I thought I'd just make that clarification. But they're at the point now where they're not picturing the person that they're actually in love with when they're together. They're kind of experiencing this weird feeling where they're just being in each other's company and getting satisfaction out of that, getting pleasure from that. So you're kind of thinking along this, at this point in the story, you're thinking, are they actually going to fall in love with each other and move on from these teachers who they should never be with? But, unfortunately, we know obviously by the end that is not the case. But, and then in volume 7, we have this big climax moment of Echan and Hanabi kind of coming to a head here, because they've been messing around with each other, and Echan kept telling her, I'm fine. I know you don't really love me, but like, I'm fine to be the replacement. I'm fine as long as you keep, touching me and being near me and allowing me to be in your life in this way. But now she's at the point where she's like, I can't do this anymore. This is such an emotional strain on me, and you don't understand how difficult it is for me to be around you. And this is a point where she's setting a boundary with Hanabi to be like, I know you don't love me, and I know that it's not your fault that we've been sleeping together, because she was the one who initiated it. Echan, I mean. However, she's setting a boundary with Hanabi now. I believe this is when she had taken her on they had gone to a cabin. Yes. So Echan brought Hanabi out to her family's cabin or her summer house or whatever, hoping they would be alone. Turns out Echan's cousin, who's in love with her, that's another weird turn that this story took. He shows up knowing full well that these two are going to be there, because he wants to stop Echan from being with her, because he's like, you should be with me instead. But yeah, it's a point where Echan's setting boundaries, and Hanabi's like, I'm losing my best friend, or my only friend, really. And what do I do about this now? Now I see the kind of havoc I've been wreaking on people in my life. And it's an interesting turning point, because we see a lot of these characters sort of starting to set boundaries with each other, in terms of Mocha, not sleeping with Mugi and being like, okay, we're done, kind of thing, and Echan doing kind of the same thing with Hanabi, of being like, I'm done, I can't be around you if you're not going to actually love me. And it's not an ultimatum, it's just a fact. And I think that's an important conversation to have. Obviously, this is an over-dramatized, manga, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have. So, in the background of all this, the two teachers have actually been continuing to go on dates and sleeping with each other. Actually, not sleeping with each other, because Akane, who's used to just having sex with men constantly, and that's not a judgment on my part. It's just, she chooses men based on the fact that other people like those men. However, she's confused why this guy won't have sex with her, because that's what all the other men do. And so she's very confused. Sorry, my leg is cramping. She's very confused as to why he won't have sex with her. And so anyway, they go on this overnight trip, and he's totally in love with her. He actually ran into a younger guy who she was sleeping with, who was like, she's a monster, dude, you need to get the hell out of here while you can. And he's like, she's pretty honest with him. She opens up and says, you don't actually know who I am. I'm a horrible person. I sleep with people constantly. I don't, I'm just not who you think I am, kind of thing. And he's basically like, I really don't care. I do actually love you and I want to be with you. And so he proposes to her. And she kind of, we see her in this moment of like, or along the way, I guess, we see her kind of warming up to him. He's very sweet. He's super sweet and he's not ugly. And so we see her warming up to him and being like, why am I still spending time with this loser? Like, legitimately, she's quite rude. She's like, why am I spending time with this loser? I don't understand. Normally by this point, I've, dropped this dude and moved on to the next person, kind of thing. And we see her warming up. And so anyway, she accepts his proposal and just says, I'm going to cheat on you a ton. And he goes, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, okay. I know open relationships exist. And I think that, this could have been done a bit better because I don't know if it was just time constraint kind of thing, if they needed to wrap up the story, but I think it could have been a really interesting discussion if they had gone a little bit deeper into the relationship between the teachers, because that moment, which I believe happens in volume 7, when, he finds out that she is not this like sweet innocent lady that she portrays herself at school, that she's actually, manipulative and is quite sexually active. And all those things are, the lying about her personality and being really manipulative is not really fine, but like in terms of her sex life, sure, whatever. And he seems to be fine with that, which is great. But I wish it had a bit of more of a discussion about that sort of aspect, because I think it would be a really interesting discussion. And I know people who are polyamorous and in open relationships, and I have no problem with that or issue with that. I think that this story kind of dropped the ball on the potential of going into that sort of aspect. Though, like I said, I guess they just time constraint and whatever. So anyway, she kind of, you see her personality changing a little bit, and the wedding is either, I think the class gave them like wedding gifts and stuff, knowing that the two teachers were getting married. She gives Hanabi a flower and says, don't let someone take the next one. And so their relationship of like this weird friggin' teacher basically tormenting and harassing these students comes to an end in a bit of a sweet moment that kind of rounds out the story. I also forgot to mention, I don't know why I didn't bookmark it anywhere, but anyway, I'll go into it now. The portion here where the two of them decide, Hanabi and Mugi decide, they're going to confess their feelings to their respective crushes. And so they both do. And they're like, hey, we'll meet at the clock tower tomorrow because we're both going to do it in the evening. And then we'll meet afterward and we can console each other, whatever. So Hanabi confesses her feelings. She gets the response she was expecting, which is a hug and a like, thank you for telling me. But obviously, I'm an older brother to you and I don't see you that way, but I care about you, kind of thing. And Mugi gets to have sex with the woman he is interested in. So there we have the teacher who fully knows that this boy is in love with her because he told her. She's known him for quite a few years. But she also knows, again, that he is dating Hanabi, and she's like, I'm going to mess with this boy's feelings, and I'm also going to mess with Hanabi at the same time. So she's pretty actually horrible and should not be a teacher by any means. But she ends up sleeping with Mugi for quite a while, but then she gets bored of him and obviously gets engaged, and she's like, yeah, I'm done with you. There's nothing more for me to gain from this relationship. But Mugi, we find out Hanabi's telling him kind of at the beginning of the story, she's a witch, she's horrible, she's not a nice person. I can just tell, kind of thing. And Mugi kind of, denies it, whatever, in front of Hanabi. But we find out through his kind of thought bubbles throughout the earlier part of the story that he's fully aware of her behavior. He is fully aware of how she messes with men and sleeps with lots of men. Like, he's been aware of that since she was his tutor. But he likes her anyway and is attracted to her anyway, and he hopes to be the one to change her. He literally is like, I could be the one that makes a difference here, that causes her to realize that she doesn't need to be doing this or behaving in this way. And I think that that's an interesting, not only the gender dynamic of like this young boy who's like, I can save this woman from her own self, but also the naivete of these youth who are just like, I will be the one to make a difference in this adult's life, as if I know what's best for them. It's just so, I don't know, it's almost laughable, because you're just looking at the kids and you're going like, God, can you just, like, you just want to smack them. And the adults too, honestly. Everybody except the male teacher, and maybe Mocha as well. Like I said, she's just clingy and annoying, but like, she's not a bad person. But yeah, like you just want to smack some sense into these kids, and you're just like, God, get a clue. All of that being said, I think that this series, certainly fan servicey, obviously. There is a lot of sexual themes and scenes in this. No like genitals shown or anything, but certainly like full-on kind of masturbation scenes and different, things happening, make-out scenes, a lot of that throughout. So honestly, if you're uncomfortable with smutty sort of scenes, steer clear. But I mean, the first cover would have told you that, honestly. But yeah, it's certainly fan service. The art is stunning. Like, the whole time, and now I've consumed this story 3 times, twice reading the manga, once the anime, and every time I'm just stunned by the beauty of this art, and it's very overdramatic. It's got a very melancholic sort of feel to it. It's got a very teen angsty sort of feel to it. I don't even want to use the word poetic, because it's really not. It feels like it's trying to be poetic, but it doesn't really get there. Yeah, it is not the best thing that you are ever going to read. But my God, is it entertaining. The mess that goes on in these people's lives, the utter, just like, convoluted ridiculousness, and I don't know, if you're tired of like really sweet cutesy characters, or just people who, I don't know, like, this one is just full of people who are totally driven by their own desires, usually physical desires, but like, they're just totally selfish in their own kind of world of like, this is what I want to do, and I'm just gonna go do it, and I know what I want, and I'm gonna get it, and it's just, I don't know, maybe it's, I don't know if refreshing is the right word, because I don't think it is, but like, I just remember when I watched the anime being so encapsulated by the artwork and the music, and it was just so gorgeous looking, and maybe that's it. I mean, if the art wasn't stunning, I don't think I would have paid this series any mind, because the story is not fantastic, but the art, coupled with the ridiculous over-the-top drama of it all, is pretty friggin' entertaining. And I will read this again. I mean, like I said, 3rd time through, still loving it, still entertained. I will read this a couple years from now, and I will probably still be thoroughly entertained. So, I mean, if you've read this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think there's a spin-off, or like a second story or something. I don't even know if Yen Press ended up printing it, but in the back it says it was licensed, or was getting licensed at the time this came out. So I don't know if you know anything about that second story or second half, or I don't know what it is, but this is a complete story in and of itself, but I believe there's a spin-off. If you know anything about that, let me know. But otherwise, did anything I say make sense? Did anything I say resonate with you when you've read this or watched it? I'd love to know. if I said something that you didn't agree with, or you felt you interpreted differently when you read it, or thought differently when you read it. I would love to know. Wow, this one is a long video. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, thoroughly enjoyed my reread of Scum's Wish. Still a lot. It is still a lot. But sometimes you just want to read a series that is a whole lot of nothing. And I think that that's what this is a whole lot of nothing, with beautiful artwork. So, but yeah, some interesting discussions. I think it just doesn't go very far into them. But it gets me thinking about different things and how it could have been a bit better. How different themes could have been explored a bit more, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching.